welcome in latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Braden. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And there's our great friend, Stephen Lassan, senior editor over at Athlon Sports. Stephen, how are you?
Mike, I am still recovering from a crazy and awesome weekend of college football. It is Monday. Have you recovered, my friend, or are you still trying to recover like I am?
Oh, I don't recover till about Wednesday. But yeah, I mean, that was just an epic weekend, and we've got a coach firing. We've got a couple more coming, and man, yeah, I can't wait to break it all down with you.
So 6 of the 8 games decided by one score. We've got defensive lineman out there saving a coach for firing for one day. Got some big time matchups for teams making the playoff statements. A few interesting other results in there. So first weekend with 8 conference games in the SEC. It was I think it's fair to say it lived up to the hype, right?
Oh, it did indeed, and we got another great weekend on deck, Stephen, with 7 conference games. The only reason we don't have more is because Florida and Georgia are on a bye. So we're going to preview that. We're going to preview or reveal Stephen's Panic Meter, his updated SEC playoff and bowl projections. We're going to talk about the Florida coaching job now that Billy Napier's been kicked to the curb, and a whole lot more. But before we get into all that, got to remind the cousins, Stephen, that we're brought to you by MyBookie, the online sports book. Go check them out. If you haven't already, it really helps the show. If you're interested in wagering on the games, go check them out. MyBookie.ag is the website, and the promo code SEC, they got a special offer for all the cousins out there, Stephen. If you put in that promo code with an initial deposit all the way up to $500, use that promo code SEC, and they're willing to give you a buyback guarantee, which let's say you put $200 into an account, Stephen, you get that. You lose that $200 on the weekend because you listen to my picks. Then they'll give you that money right back so you can stay in the game, but only if you use that promo code SEC over at MyBookie. And also, don't forget our great friends over here at Tennessee Legend. Cousin Shane couldn't be here tonight because he's having a good time drinking his Tennessee Legend. I think he had a little too much, Stephen. He can barely talk. But that ain't the great Tennessee Legend fault. That's Shane's fault, if you ask me. He doesn't know how to handle Tennessee losing to Alabama. Be responsible out there with your Tennessee Legend. But if they don't have it at your distillery, go in there and ask them, why the hell not? Get them some Tennessee Legend. They'll hook you up. We'd really appreciate Tennessee Legend being the official spirit of that SEC podcast.
Tell him Cousin Shane sent you, right?
Hey, I wanted to also congratulate you, Stephen. A little update here. Stephen has pulled even with the cousins. He had a 7-1 weekend. Only game he's regretting is LSU Vanderbilt. We tried to warn you, Stephen, that Vanderbilt was legit. I know you were torn on that one, but congratulations. You and the cousins tied at 69. Nice. I'm at 67. Shane, dead last, 66. So you have an opportunity this week, Stephen, to pull ahead of the cousins for the first time. Don't blow it.
It's a lot of pressure. This is a hard slate of games coming up to predict. I think it's harder than the week 8 slate, don't you?
Oh, yeah. No, I think so. Because aside from one game, and I'm looking at you, Cocktober, I think every one of these is basically a coin toss type game. I really do.
Sounds like your cousin Shane is going to need some Tennessee Legends on Saturday night if you're telling me that Tennessee Kentucky's going to be a toss-up. But man, couple ranked matchups. I'm fascinated by Texas A&M and LSU because of the stakes, and obviously Texas A&M's playoff chase, LSU trying to fight back in it. But man, it is another just loaded slate of games in the SEC. If you look at like the top 10 games for week 9 just nationally, I bet, probably 5 or 6 of these games are in the top 8 this week nationally. I mean, it is just another slate of games that is going to shake up the conference title race and also the stakes for the playoff.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, I wanted to shout out real quick, Stephen. We had a donation from Junior. He's fired up because his Gators fired Billy Napier. So we're going to get into a little bit of that. But before we do, he gifted Senior Geek. Senior, welcome to
the family.
Courtesy of Junior. We appreciate you, Junior. Where would you like to start with the weekend that was, though, Stephen? Thoughts on all these tremendous games we had? What is the biggest result in your mind?
How about Georgia? How about Georgia beating Ole Miss? I think, I mean, first of all, just a fantastic game to take in and watch. Two teams trading punches for a couple of quarters, and it comes down to the end, and one defense has to make the stop. And I think that's kind of been the story for this Georgia team this year. It's almost just like resilience. They're the Michael Myers of the SEC. You can't kill them. You can't stop them. No matter what you do going into the fourth quarter, they will just find a way to win. So with the game on the line, Georgia's defense made the plays. Also, Gunnar Stockton was tremendous on Saturday. So big win for Georgia. Ole Miss, significant loss, but still plenty of time to work their way back into it. But I just keep coming back to, with the game on the line every week, Georgia just keeps making the plays to win those games.
And I know there's always freak out, Stephen, right? When you lose a game, Ole Miss could be undefeated right now. They could be top, I don't know, 3 in the country had they finished the deal, so to speak. But I don't know about you, but when I was watching that game, I got the sense that we are watching two of the best teams in the country, and they're certainly not locks, but certainly two teams that I believe will make the college football playoff. Would you agree with that assessment?
I agree with you. I think both of these teams are on track to make the college football playoff. And I think pretty highly of Georgia. I had them, I think I voted them in my top 5 this week. So if Georgia's top 5, then Ole Miss isn't too far behind that. In general, Mike, I do think when you watch these two teams or some of the other teams across the conference this year, it does feel like the gap between like 1 and 10 is pretty small, and it's giving us so many close and great games every week, which is great for people like me and you to talk about them. It's great for the fans. Probably not great if you have, if you need to consult a cardiologist while watching some of these games because they're so close. But yes, Mike, I think in the big picture, these are two top 10 teams on track to make the college football playoff and potentially rematching in the SEC championship game if the breaks go their way.
After seeing this performance from Gunnar Stockton, and certainly not his only standout performance, Tennessee for sure, Auburn in the second half, he had some moments against Bama, but are you starting to, and not that you were doubting him before, but do you believe now that he is capable of leading Georgia perhaps all the way to a national championship?
I think so, because I think also you trust the collective at Georgia too. Like I know their defense is not as dominant as it has been, but when the game was on the line the last couple of weeks, they've made the stops. Alabama, of course, was the one in the first half where they struggled, played a lot better in the second half. I think their defense will get better. Also think too, they've had so many injuries along the offensive line, and when they can get everybody healthy, that ground game can really take off, which helps Gunnar Stockton. So I just think there's a lot of ingredients to like about Georgia. There's a lot of ifs. There's still a lot of questions, but I've grown in confidence in Gunnar Stockton really since that Tennessee game. And I think kind of showing up on Saturday and throwing for 289, 4 touchdowns, what he did on the ground only added to that confidence level as we go forward.
Now, what about for Ole Miss, Stephen? Again, one loss on the road. You were underdogs. I don't think anyone's putting shovel on your grave or anything like that. But is it a concern? Only 88 rushing yards. Again, I know this is mighty Georgia. This ain't Washington State or whatever, but that was the narrative coming out of Washington State. Well, all our focus was on Georgia, and maybe it was, because you certainly dialed up a lot of plays on offense that were very successful, but couldn't get that ground game going. And I know we'll talk about this on the back end. You got Oklahoma next. I think they have even a better defensive than Georgia right now. I don't even think that's debatable right now. But level of concern that Ole Miss kind of got stifled there, and again, Ole Miss also got. Well, South Carolina, they should be fine. But Florida, even though they fired their coach, they got a solid defense. Mississippi State's got a tenacious, I don't know, tenacious, but much improved defense. How big of a concern is this that Ole Miss is getting a little bit stifled on the ground?
Mike, I think it is a concern. Is it like panic level 10? Probably not. Certainly when you have somebody like Chambliss who can make plays on the ground too, that helps. But I do think I know like Ole Miss fans know this, you and I know this, but a lot of Lane Kiffin's offense, like everything flows off the ground game. Like for as good as quarterbacks and Jackson Dart, they've had 1,000-yard rushers. We saw this last year. They had issues at times running the ball, which I think hurt their offense. And in this game, Lacey only having 31 yards rushing, a little bit more could take the pressure off of Chambliss, opens up the offense even more. Now they scored almost every time they touched the ball. But late in the game, I always think about trying to close out a game and you need a couple yards. If you have that rushing attack, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, whatever it is, you can get those yards, keep the drive going. It just only increases your chances of winning. So just looking at their schedule going forward, Mike, I think this Oklahoma game is huge because if they win this game, they're going to be favored to beat South Carolina, Citadel, Florida. If you win this Oklahoma game, whatever happens in the Egg Bowl, which tends to be crazy, you're probably sitting there at 10 victories, which are in the playoffs. So I think in the bigger picture, like offensive line, rushing attack, getting this group going against Oklahoma is going to be key because I don't think you want to go on the road and put everything on Chambliss to try and beat this defense because the challenge is only tougher than it was against Georgia.
Right. Well, hey, I'd like to talk some Alabama with you, Stephen, but before we do, let's honor our other Stephen. Stephen up!
Always showing up for them boys in Tuscaloosa. It's Stephen up. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Stephen up. He gifted Brandon Kurtz a membership. Brandon, welcome to
the family!
Yeah! And then we could talk some Mizzou after that because Mizzou fan just gifted 5 memberships, Stephen. Shout out Cocky Ryan. Shout out Bam, Todd Shirley, Cody Christopherson, Sooner Fan 918. You have all been gifted by Missouri Fan. Missouri Fan, welcome to
the family.
And then, hey, Brandon Kurtz got gifted a membership, but then he became one himself. So Brandon went double trouble there. And speaking of them dogs, there's no better dog, Stephen, than the legend, JR.
The legend, cousin JR, has done it again.
Thank you, JR, you damn legend. He gifted Mr. Piss Missile. What a name, Mr. Piss Missile. Welcome to
the family.
All right, as promised, Bama, Stephen, buddy. I don't even want to talk about it. I'm not as bad. I'm not as down as old Shane, trust me. But Bama defended the home turf 37-20. The stat, everyone's heard it by now. Bama beating 4 ranked teams in a row without a bye. First time in SEC history that has been accomplished, believe it or not. Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee, and perhaps even more impressive, Stephen, 2 of those were on the road. But now, I don't want to look ahead too much, but this is the game that gets Kayla DeBoer. I guess unranked, we're about to whoop their ass type game, but I kind of kid. Thoughts on Alabama whipping Tennessee?
Mike, I think just in the big picture, really impressive what Alabama has been able to do since losing that game to Florida State, because I think there was a lot of thought that this is not going to work out for Kayla DeBoer. And what do? They just simply come back and win 6 straight games, and they've gotten on a roll. And it's not like they're beating nobodies. You mentioned it, 4 ranked opponents every week, taking care of business. And you wondered, okay, they've beaten 3 opponents that were ranked. What's the tank going to be like? It was full on Saturday night. Also, I think there's a theme here, and we talked about this with Georgia, but it's also true with Alabama, is I think about the word clutch, because every time that Alabama has needed a play this year, they have found a way to do it. It's Ty Simpson delivering the 9-play, 99-yard drive. Sorry, Mike. It's the 99-yard interception before halftime. It's the safety, then scoring a touchdown right off of it. Like, the game was in the balance. Alabama made the plays to put this game away. Also, we talk about matchups coming into the game. Alabama's offensive line against Tennessee's defensive front. Who would win? Ty Simpson wasn't sacked, and he was only pressured 7 times per Pro Football Focus. So Alabama's offensive line won the day, and they made those clutch plays to win this game and continue what's been a really impressive run for Kayla DeBoer and this team.
And then old Sam, he's pissed off. Alabama didn't whip Tennessee. They made 1 play. Otherwise, it's a 1-score game. I don't know. Sometimes you watch a game, your team get, their ass whipped from the get go, and here it was a one play game. I don't know about that, Stephen. I think this was a pretty thorough ass whooping. What about you?
Tennessee did outgain Alabama 410 to 373. Now I just sound like Hugh Freeze, like making excuses for Tennessee here. But I think, to some extent, like if you think about we talked about, okay, matchups come into game. We just talked about Alabama winning the offensive line. Tennessee had 142 rushing yards. I think they probably needed more than that to win this game, given Alabama's struggles. But also, you can't lose all the big moments in this game and just be one play away from winning. Like if you throw an interception on the goal line that's returned 99 yards, you have a safety. Like there's a lot of small mental errors that added up for Tennessee on Saturday. 10 penalties too. All of those things added up for Tennessee. It wasn't just, to me, a 50-50 game. There were several mistakes along the way. 17-point victory on the scoreboard is also pretty convincing too.
Now, that being said, I've seen some doom and gloom with some of these bowls, Steve, and I don't think by any stretch season's over. I know it's not where you want it to be, but heck, I mean, there's a very reasonable case for them to run the table. Again, not if they played like they did on Saturday, but I don't think Oklahoma included, Vanderbilt included, I don't think they're going to see a team nearly as good as Alabama. And both of those games, Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, they get them at home. They do go to Kentucky this week. They they completely own Kentucky's ass. And then Florida owns them, but who knows with the transition. So where are you at with, with Tennessee? It's season's not over, is it?
100%. It's not, Mike. Let me ask you this. If for you and Shane, if I told you guys that Tennessee was 5-2 at this point of the season in the preseason with losses to Georgia and Alabama, you would have said that's probably about right?
Well, not Shane, because he's an absolute homer. But
okay.
this is exactly where I thought they would be. And hell, I think I had them pegged as around 9-3, which they very well could still do, but they could be even better than that, So, I called this one, Stephen Hill. I got the score like 1 point off here. I mean, I don't understand why any Tennessee fans, given what we've seen this year, had any illusions that they were going to go down to Tuscaloosa and beat that team. Alabama's they're the cream of the SEC, in my opinion. Now you could quibble with that and say A&M is, and that's fine, but I think it's A&M. I think it's Bama. I think those are 1-2 right now.
I would take Alabama as the best team in the SEC, but Texas A&M and Georgia are not far behind. I'd be curious to know, like on a neutral field, what maybe the odds makers have those teams right now. But on Tennessee, though, Mike, 5-2, they could conceivably run the table the rest of the way. I think Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Florida, maybe even Kentucky, those are all going to be tough. They're not easy, but they got a chance to get to 10-2. And if I told you they finished 9-3 or 10-2 in the offseason after what happened with the quarterback situation, yes, I know the loss to Georgia was painful. Yes, losing to Alabama by 17, that sucks if you're a Tennessee fan. But I want to give some credit to Heupel in the coaching job here to be able to take Joey Aguilar, who was at App State and UCLA. He gets thrown into the mix right before fall practice, and the offense is this effective, and they're sitting here with a chance to still make the college football playoff. I get it. You want to be undefeated at this point, but Tennessee is very much alive to make the playoff. And at this point of the season, there should be not a lot of doom and gloom. There should be a lot of optimism they can get to 10-2 still.
And then for Alabama, what do you think is the toughest remaining game in the regular season, of course?
Man, that's a good question. I almost want to go Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But I'm also tempted to say Auburn on November 29th, just because it's the rivalry. I think probably Oklahoma, just because defense, right? The defensive line travels. They could give Ty Simpson a lot of trouble. Is that fair?
I think so. And apologies, I should have led with this for audio listeners listening back. But at South Carolina, bye week, LSU at home, Oklahoma at home. What is that? Eastern Illinois. I always forget what directional Illinois that is. And then at Auburn. So I think, Auburn, if they get the offense going, which is, I don't assume that will happen, that could be the answer. And it probably is. But right now, on my money, give me Oklahoma.
I think this weekend's game will be interesting too. Alabama favored for good reason, but we've also seen Alabama struggle on the road under Kalen DeBoer. So don't think we should totally write it off from getting tricky territory here. But I think Oklahoma at Auburn would be my two toughest games. I mean, that's also totally just glossing over LSU coming up on November 8th. Alabama whipped them pretty bad last year, though.
Hey, shout out Brandon Norwood. He gave us a donation. Stephen, if LSU could hire Bobby P as offensive coordinator and get Taylor Green to come with them, yeah, I mean, that would be nice to live in that fantasy world. Hey, shout out Trey Drawday. He gifted a membership all day, Trey. He gifted like 50 in one episode before, that damn wild man. Shout out Trey. He gifted Sean Lupton. Sean, welcome to
the family.
Yeah, appreciate you. All day, Trey. And then Mizzou fans, he's back. Mizzou's a lot better team than Tennessee. I'm going to get your thoughts on that in just a second. But Cyrus Sellers, Lenoris's cousin? Who knows? Cyrus, welcome to
family.
What do you think of that, Steven? So let's talk some Mizzou. Went into Auburn. I mean, I was told Auburn's a tough place to win, Steven. They're 2-9 at home against Power 4 competition under Hugh Freeze. I think that says more about Hugh Freeze than it does anything else. But do you agree with Mizzou fan number 7? Mizzou is a lot better team than Tennessee. That's his direct quote.
Man, you know what? I think I had these teams back to back in my power rankings. So this is a great question because they're like dead even in my power rankings. Also, I was just looking as a neutral party observer because I don't want to mislead anybody here. Tennessee is 13th in ESPN's football power index and Missouri is 17. So we're talking like two teams that are just right on the edge here. I don't know. I might go Tennessee a little bit better, but not by much. Like I said, they're back to back in my power ratings. The one thing about Missouri that maybe worries me a little bit is the interceptions from Perbula the last couple of weeks. They didn't cost Missouri on Saturday, but he's going to have to clean those up going forward if Missouri wants to get back into this playoff chase. Also need to see that run game. No surprise, Auburn's defensive front is good, but they need to get Ahmad Hardy back on track. So I guess to answer his question, I probably would take Tennessee, but not by much.
Mm-hmm. And then what were your thoughts on this outstanding, what was a double overtime game, thanks to some poor field goal kicking from both these teams? But man, Hugh Freeze just continues to find new ways, inventing new ways to lose on the Plains. Hate it for the fans, love it for him. He's 0 for 4 in the conference for the 3rd consecutive year. How many years he been down there, Stephen? Oh, just 3. So he loses 4 every damn time. Yet we got to crown his ass and act like he knows what he's doing when it comes to coaching. That's my commentary, not Stephen's. But thoughts on Auburn shitting the bed once again and Missouri going on the road for the first time and quite honestly surviving, because I thought at times, Stephen, just my opinion, it looked like they were pulling away, and then at other times it looked like they were going to give us one away, but they made the plays and Auburn didn't.
Yeah, that was a really interesting game on Saturday night. First of all, I have to say, one of the funniest moments I've seen this season is Drinkwitz celebrating the field goal and walking towards midfield as if Missouri had won and it was missed. That was probably one of the funniest things I've seen this year. Maybe I was just tired on Saturday night, but it was funny to see that happen. Mike, I think on the game and just thinking about it, felt like at times there was two teams trying to lose it and to see which team would just take kind of hold on the scoreboard at the end. I mean, Auburn's missed field goals, some of the other mistakes, whether it was like, the missed deep ball, whether it was turnovers for both teams, like whichever it was, like there was times this game felt like it was kind of swinging towards Missouri, felt like it was swinging towards Auburn. Both teams tried to lose it. And then Missouri, of course, made the plays in overtime to win. Also love the coin toss with Zion Young going out there and talking some smack to Auburn. So, I mean, there's a fine line between winning and losing in the SEC, and Auburn just keeps finding ways to lose games. And credit to Missouri for going on the road the first time this year and being able to pick up a big win in SEC play.
Yeah. I mean, it's just wild. And shout out, I don't know if you follow this gentleman's work or not, Stephen, but the great Eddie Radosevich over there at Sooner Scoop, who he put it quite eloquently. I always enjoy getting these reactions from the Oklahoma and Texas media people and fans as they I know that this is year 2 in the SEC, but they're still learning, right? But he said after this one that Auburn fans should, write some kind of narrative about how to deal with these agonizing results, because I would imagine that's the only thing he knows about Auburn. But it's quite honestly that's kind of their history at times. It's glorious or it's disaster, and we're kind of living the worst of times right now with Hugh Freeze, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%. And I guess it's appropriate that they play Arkansas this week, the team that's been just on the edge of like winning so many of these games. So it's like two teams that have very painful moments this year matching up. By the way, also kind of, previewing this game a little bit, but what happens when an offense that can't move the ball meets a defense that can't stop anybody? What a glorious game this is going to be.
Oh man, I can't wait for it. But yeah, I'm kind of over old Auburn. So let's move on to a better team here. How about that Commodores, Stephen, beating LSU 31-24. Vanderbilt looks legit. If you haven't watched them yet, then you don't know who this team is. This ain't your granddad's Vanderbilt, Stephen. This is a new age. They physically dominated LSU, I thought. And hell, LSU, I thought this was one of the better games they played all year. They still come up short here in Nashville. LSU searching for answers while Vanderbilt stays alive in the playoff hunt. What was your thoughts on this one?
Mike, I think you nailed it there. I think, first of all, Diego Pavia was just awesome in this game. Whether it was passing, whether it was rushing, Vanderbilt's offense had LSU's defense in a blender for most of this game. And, I know they got the stop on downs early. They made a couple stops late. But for the most part, I thought this LSU defense Vanderbilt's offense really had this LSU's defense number. So, Tim Beck, Diego Pavia, unbelievable on Saturday. I thought Nussmeier also looked maybe a little bit closer to 100% for LSU, but also thought that the same problems that we've seen, like whether it's offensive line, whether it's consistency in the run game, now your defense kind of springs a leak. It's kind of also the same thing that we talked about with Alabama and Georgia. I think Vanderbilt's been pretty clutch here. Controlling the time of possession for 36 minutes. They were about 50% on third downs. The defense came through. Also, one of the things this spread was like a 0.2, 3 points when you looked at it coming into kickoff. But I thought one of the things that also mattered a lot was Vanderbilt was scoring touchdowns and LSU was kicking field goals. As basic as that sounds, it's like Vanderbilt defensively, probably not, top 5 in the SEC, but they were making the timely stops. And when you're doing that and Pavia is getting 7, that's the method for Vanderbilt to win this game. So I think we have to, I know we've done it, but it's time for everybody to start putting Diego Pavia in the Heisman mix. And also it's time for Vanderbilt to be considered a playoff contender because they very much are in this mix.
And I love to see it. Now, hey, we were talking about elite of elite, Stephen. A&M's up there, 45, Arkansas 42 on the road. And I've seen some Aggies, man, they're getting their feelings hurt because people are mocking them for this close one. But in my mind, this was very similar to Arkansas, Tennessee, where one team I felt was largely in control for much of the game, and then some scores late made it look deceivingly close. That's I'm not trying to throw shade at Arkansas. Hell, no one has praised Taylon Green outside of that state more than I have for 2 years. So I think Taylon Green is elite of elite. But A&M just keeps finding answers. Marcel Reed, I thought maybe this was his best game to date. And any road win is a good win. Thoughts on this one, Stephen?
Mike, a road win is good, and especially when it comes in a series that has been wild, it has been crazy, and it has been unpredictable. And also going to Fayetteville after playing in Arlington, this is a good win for Texas A&M. If you just step back and look at Arkansas, every game this season outside of Notre Dame, they have lost close. It was the last minute against Memphis, the fumble against Ole Miss, by 3 to Tennessee, and then of course by 3 to Texas A&M. It is not surprising that they traded punches with Texas A&M for 4 quarters. I think you got to give a ton of credit to A&M because they took the big lead. Arkansas punched back, and then every time Texas A&M felt like Arkansas was ready to make this a game, maybe take the lead, A&M found a way to get a score, whether it was Marcel Reed, whether it was Ruben Owens, whether it was the defense finding a way to get a stop. Like when Texas A&M needed to answer the bell in a close game in a hostile environment, they did. There is no shame in a 3-point win in a series that has been pretty wild. So A&M just survive in advance and move a little bit closer to the playoff. That's all that matters.
Mm-hmm. And then I know you're not like a NFL analyst or anything like that, but with a lot of the big name quarterbacks in the sport kind of stumbling, at least, from perception, who knows? I mean, just because people say like Nussmeier and Drew Aller are top picks doesn't make it to where they truly are. But do you think Taylon Green could be one of, if not the highest drafted quarterbacks in the upcoming draft?
I would be surprised if he goes first or second round right now. I think, though, that somebody is going to fall in love with that skill set and see a quarterback that could be molded in the NFL. And especially, I think if you watch him from Boise to Arkansas and see the growth as a passer, I think there's probably a lot there. So to your point, I think maybe he'd be considered a little bit of a developmental prospect for the NFL, but I think his stock has grown significantly since the start of the season.
I just love watching him play, and I hope I get to watch him for about 10 more years at least. But, hey, all right, speaking of that, how about loving to watch this play? Oklahoma completely dominated South Carolina, Stephen, and it was wild because I didn't think Oklahoma could run the ball. Now, maybe that's a South Carolina issue. But let's give credit where credit's due because they busted out for 171 rushing yards, and virtually none of that, I believe, was on John Mateer's shoulders, which is good. You gotta stop relying on him to be the entire offense, and they did that, and they really dominated. South Carolina had a little bit of a life here early in the game, got stuffed on a goal line, and then it was basically all downhill from there. I mean, Carolina's firing people, and they're getting asked, in post game, hey, who's getting fired next? I mean, that's how great things are going down there. Meanwhile, Oklahoma backs against the wall. One of the more physically dominant performances they put on the field, at least in the Southeastern Conference this season. What was your thoughts on this one?
Mike, at the most basic level, the fact that Oklahoma was able to rebound a week after losing to Texas is just a good step forward for this team. This team is very much in the playoff hunt, and this game against South Carolina was probably one of their easier remaining games, given what's coming up for Oklahoma. So the fact they were able to go on the road after a tough loss, get a big win, is significant for this team's hopes to get back in the playoff chase. Also, love the fact that they were able to run the ball. That has been a consistent concern of mine since the start of the season. John Mateer is great. The defense is great, but you're not going to be able to beat Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, or LSU with a rushing attack that's getting about 20, 30 yards and just relying on John Mateer to carry your team. So if that part of the Oklahoma offense is starting to come alive, that is great news for this team with this stretch coming up.
Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side for Carolina, is there any hope that we're about out of Cocktober here, Stephen, and I'm searching for wins? You know what?
I think they get Coastal Carolina and Clemson, and I'm having a hard time finding a sixth victory. But Shane Beamer has been Mr. Second Half, Mr. November. South Carolina has pulled off some upsets before. The challenge is Texas A&M and Ole Miss are on the road, and Alabama's like red hot right now. So it's not easy. But, Mike, I think the bigger concern for me is just the way this offense has played. I mean, under 300 yards of total offense. Yes, Oklahoma is very good on defense, but, 36 of your 54 rushing yards, and, of course, some of that's sacks in there, came on one rush. Like there's just no balance on offense, and there's just too much pressure on the North Sellers. So once again, kind of the same old story for the South Carolina team right now.
Yeah, and shout out to AJ in SC in the comments. No idea if this is factual. I should probably never rely on the comment section for news. But he says our students literally scheduled a protest on campus tomorrow to fire Shula, our only hope. I hope that's true. I hope I'm not spreading fake news, but that's pretty amazing if true.
Mike, it is. And I think this is, I really think that this is a major concern for South Carolina. And I know Shane Beamer's won a lot of games there. the offensive coordinator hires have not been overly inspiring. And at a place like South Carolina, you should be able to go out and get somebody that's a lot more, I guess, college competent on offense. I mean, Shula's done good work in developing quarterbacks. I think maybe offensive coordinator might be where he's not fit for. It's hard when you have an offensive line that's this bad too. That could be that. It just may just be hard to overcome that. But still,
it wasn't that long ago, Stephen. We beat Clemson when there was that clip going around where, did you hear Dow wasn't even calling the plays? I heard it was Shula.
Right.
This was off the Marcus Satterfield. I mean, this is just, it's stacking up. You know what?
You got to hire some. I mean, Shane Beamer has done so many good things at South Carolina. And the fact that, they came into the season potentially with some preseason top 25 buzz, like he's done good things there. But you've got to get this offensive coordinator hire right. I mean, if Shula doesn't work out, you've cycled through Satterfield. Loggins left to be the head coach at App State. It's a little different story, but still 3 hires that were met with kind of and they've all been kind of blah. And I don't mean that in a good way. It feels like this one is quickly trending towards that direction too.
It is. Hey, sorry, I missed this one. Cyrus, he says, I wish I had the connections to play football, but no, I don't think Lenore Sellers is a brother or a cousin. No clue. I'm an A&M fan, so shout out Cyrus. Speaking of Sellers. And Vols by 50, gifted a membership, hopefully not to one of them Crimson Tide fans. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. Frank, welcome to
the family.
Courtesy of Vols by 50. Maybe this week because they're playing Kentucky. All right, how about this one, Stephen? Oof. We're going to talk Billy Napier here. Well, not really, but just more the job opening than anything. But what will you remember most, Stephen, about the final game of the Billy Napier era, aside from the fans chanting, "Fire Billy"?
Mike, I think the thing that I will remember the most is a tenure at Florida that was plagued by steps forward and constant steps back, weird penalties, weird stuff going on. The final play is basically a defensive lineman dropping into coverage and picking off a pass that should not have been thrown, and Mississippi State probably should have won that game. That is what I remember. A weird tenure ends at a weird moment, and Florida wins, basically in a game that was really important for both teams to try to get bowl eligible. So that's what I'll always remember. A weird tenure ended by a weird play.
And any excuse, I mean, what for Mississippi State, it's like, buddy, we just let one slip through our fingers. And I can't help but think, and again, I've praised Jeff Lebby this season because I think he's shown a lot of growth. I think he's developing into a nice coach here, Stephen. But for as good that as he has shown this year, is it wrong to sit here and say, well, this is why I always say I would not, and I know you can just sit here and be like, well, Kirby did it, but I would not hire someone at this conference, at this level, with these decisions are so critical. I would never hire a guy that's never been a head coach because I think Lebby is still learning on the job, and I think it costs you a damn game in the conference. Is that a fair criticism, or am I being too harsh?
Well, I think maybe the way I would look at this as maybe these mistakes are sort of like learning experiences for next year. A team that has gotten significantly better in one offseason, and maybe you're not making these same mistakes. But to your point on the bigger picture of the coaching, I think you want experience if you come into this league. It's the best of the best. Even I saw a stat about the margin of victory, and I wish I would have written it down before, but the margin of victory this year in SEC play is like at one of its lowest in some time. Like this conference is clustered together. Decisions in close games can really add up. Like a small mistake in managing the clock, a turnover, a decision like Lebby made on Saturday cost you a game. So yes, I would prefer to have a head coach that has experience before he comes into the SEC. I do think that, and I've said this, let's give Lebby a lot of credit because they were clearly 16th coming into the league this year. They might make a bowl game. They have punched above their weight playing Tennessee and Florida to one score. They've got to find 2 more victories, but even if they finish 5-7, I still think it's a successful year for this team.
Mm-hmm. Well, what may not be a success, Stephen, You got to answer for your crimes here. Texas going on the road, beating Kentucky 16-13. They're literally telling the media down there to smile and stop being negative. And man, this is not great. Sark is getting faced with questions of whether he should continue to call the plays. And I mean, I haven't even mentioned old Arch yet, but what was your thoughts on this disaster?
Mike, let me ask you which of these terms appropriately sums up this game. Ugly, pathetic, terrible, awful, vomit-inducing. I don't know which word was the way to describe
Yes,
it.
all of them.
All of the above. I mean, I guess the only thing you could take away from this from Texas is survive and advance, right? Yeah, a week after playing Oklahoma, you go on the road in SEC play, you get a victory. Frankly, Texas has not played well on the road at all this year, whether that's Ohio State, Florida, or Kentucky. I guess that's the biggest takeaway because, Mike, the offense was horrific. And this all goes back to the offensive line. I mean, 47 rushing yards, 3 sacks allowed. Arch played terrible too. The same problems that we saw at times this year, which is very easy throws that he missed on some of those. Also, end of game management. We talk about Jeff Lebby, but Mike, the end of the game, Texas had a chance to stay in bounds and basically end it. Kentucky probably wouldn't have had time to get a field goal, but they went out of bounds, and of course, it gave Kentucky a chance. So Texas really played into Kentucky's hands to some extent with the way they managed the game. But also, should we be surprised? I mean, Kentucky has kind of done this to Ole Miss. They did it to Georgia. They seem to put some top-ranked team through a blender, and they get the paper cuts going 2-3 yards. They get a first down. They take 3 minutes out of the clock. I mean, it was bad for Texas. The only thing I could say is you won and you keep your playoff hopes alive for another week. That's probably the nicest thing you could say, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I was just shaking my head. I mean, that was my lock of the week. I thought they would whoop old Kentucky, and they damn near lost it.
I think some credit should go to Cutter Boley in this game too. I thought, against one of the better defenses, he made a lot of plays to keep them in it, whether it was scrambling. He made some nice throws as well. Also, I think credit to Mark Stoops and Bush Hamden. I've been hard and critical on both, but they had a good game plan to control the time possession, sort of, maximizing your success and getting to 3rd and short and not leaving Boley trying to win at a 3rd and 10 all game. So that Mark Stoops and company had a good plan here. Didn't love the play calling at the goal line at the end of the game. Just run it right at the strength of the Texas defense. Sounds like a brilliant idea.
That guy. Well, that may not be a great idea, Steven. You know what is? Bubs Naturals. Go check them out. New sponsor to the show. Bubs Naturals Collagen Peptides. Steven, go check them out at bubsnaturals.com. Promo code that. SECTHAT for 20% off your entire order for a limited time over at Bubs Naturals. Steven, this is great stuff. No junk, no sugars, no sweeteners, no fillers. And what this is, man, I don't know about you, Steven. Actually, I do know because we talk about this off air. Getting old sucks. And being sore, not being able to work out like we used to, well, go check them out over at Bubs. Live better, longer, limited time. Again, 20% off Bubs Naturals with that promo code that SEC over at Bubs Natural Collagen Peptides. You're really going to want to check us out. They sent us over some packets, and that's why I got so much pep in my step, Steven. It's got nothing to do with Hugh Freeze crashing and burning. It's got nothing to do with old Billy Napier shitting a bed and getting fired. It's just Bubs Naturals. Go check them out at bubsnaturals.com. Don't forget, most importantly, that promo code you see down there, that SEC, get you 20% off, and that'll let them know that we sent you on over there. There'll be a link in the show notes to go check them out. But I'm just telling you, Steven, if you're having a rough one, go get you some Bubs Naturals.
You do seem like you've got some extra energy tonight. Although I will say, Mike, my wife saw the news yesterday that Billy Napier got fired, and she said somebody should hire him to put people to sleep when he talks. So maybe we need to send Billy some Bubs Natural there, right?
Yeah. All right, Steven. So we've done the recap of the week that was. where should we go next? How about the panic meter?
Let's start there, Mike. How about we start with Texas? I'm panicking about this offense, Mike. I'm setting the panic level at 8. That may not be high enough. What do you think?
Ooh. I mean, maybe it was a one-off. Maybe UTEP was a one-off. Maybe San Jose State was maybe Ohio State was a one-off. And he looked pretty good against Sam Houston. I'll give him that. But, yeah, the fact that we've made it to this point, at least they're not eliminated yet. So, I mean, it's not quite doom and gloom. So I think you nailed it. I wouldn't go much higher because, I mean, 8 is pretty high already. But, yeah, I don't know, man. If Texas goes 8-4, I wouldn't even be surprised at this point in time. Will you?
I would not be surprised either, Mike, because I think they could lose to Vanderbilt. I think they could lose to Georgia. I think they could lose to Texas A&M. Also, if that same Texas team that played Kentucky shows up this Saturday, they're going to get beat by Mississippi State. So, yes, I think 8-4 is very realistic at this point.
And, it seems like the offensive line's a train wreck. That's a real issue. I believe you were the one, Stephen, that told me, hey, they're bringing in offensive line consultants. I thought they had an offensive line coach. Isn't he been with Sarkisian for years and years? So that's concerning. I know it's very popular to bash Arch Manning, and I'm not necessarily saying we should do that, but what is it? This is year 3 for him, right? And I know it's just year 1 as a starting quarterback, but I don't think that's an excuse given how much he's played and working for Sarkisian and the weapons they have. I don't know. The whole thing seems to be not great.
It's really puzzling to me why a Steve Sarkisian coached offense is averaging about 17 points a game in conference play, and they are 106th in the country in success rate offensively. I mean, this is like really bad territory. And I think coming into the season, one of my thoughts when this team was, you just assume Sark's going to scheme up like 30 points a game, right? I mean, that's just kind of the nature of Sark's track record. So I think from a schematic coaching standpoint, it feels like this has not been one of Sark's better coaching jobs. You also look at the offensive line and rushing attack, and I think that's kind of where it starts because it feels like to me like everything in this offense feeds off of having a good ground game. They've been under 55 rushing yards in 2 of their last 3 SEC games, Kentucky and Florida. Now, they had 136 against Oklahoma. Probably no surprise that maybe the offense looked at one of its best points this year. So I think offensive line is really the main culprit here. But still, I mean, there's a lot of, we've talked about this now a couple weeks. It's like, well, they played well against Sam Houston, but they struggled against Florida. It was on the road. They played well against Oklahoma. Now we're back to, well, maybe it was the Oklahoma hangover that they struggled against Kentucky. It might just be this offense is just not very good, and it's not going to dig itself out this year. If they play well against Mississippi State, that narrative completely changes. But if this offense does not figure out something on the offensive line and rushing attack, 8-4 seems very realistic for this team, like we discussed.
Right. And then who was it? I just saw a comment from, I believe, Tony. He said, well, and Texas could win out.
Yeah.
On a scale of 0 to 100, 100 being most likely, what percentage would you give Texas to win out?
I'd probably put it at about like 50%.
Wow, 50?
Maybe that might be a little high.
I'm at like 10.
Yeah, that might be a little high. Let's go closer to 30. Here's why I would give them a chance is because they get A&M at home. I think A&M and Vanderbilt at home, it's huge. I think they should beat Mississippi State. I don't know if they're going to. They're going to be favored. I think Georgia's the one game on the road. It just seems like I just don't think they can go into Athens and get a victory, not with the way they've played on offense this year. So, no, I don't disagree with that comment. They could. I think my confidence level is pretty low. 50% might be too high. It's probably closer to 20 or 30.
That was that preseason Arch token.
Right.
Hey, so Larth, can we get Schumann to Arkansas? We were just bashing hiring coordinators to be head coach, so I hope to God they don't. But maybe Bobo to Florida. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. He says, "What do you think, Glenn Schumann to Arkansas?" I wouldn't make that move, would you?
Is that a Georgia fan wanting to get rid of both the coordinators,
I
trying to
think so.
rehome somebody? I actually have a theory about this. I wonder if this might be the coaching carousel where a lot of guys get rehomed. Because would it shock you if Brian Kelly just decided, like, hey, I'm kind of on the hot seat here. Florida State comes open. I'm out. Not crazy, right?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and maybe we could kind of. I mean, Jimmy Sexton's going to Jimmy Sexton, so he's going to get his people paid. But I wonder if there's a way where like James Franklin and Brian Kelly can switch places, or things of that nature, to where maybe we're not bending over the barrel to sign these guys. But I don't know. Hey, shout out Arch Torrens too. He says our offensive line sucks, play calling atrocious, and Arch isn't nearly good enough to make up for all that, which that's fair, but I don't know. Again, you just got to call it like you see it, right, Steven? I mean, there's plays to be made, and he's not making them. You can't blame that on the offensive line. There's a receiver streaking wide open, and he's looking at it, and then he checks down. That's not on the offensive line. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying he's a horrible person. I'm not saying he's a horrible quarterback, but he's just not playing well.
I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, at Ohio State. But I think 7 games into the season, and especially like on Saturday, there was like 2 or 3 throws. It's like the guy's wide open. Like, you've got to step up and hit it. Maybe some of that pressure in the pocket has led to a little bit of like anxiety, being able to step up in your throws. So I understand all that. The offensive line is not good at all, but at the same time, there's some easy gimmies that he has to take. And I think that's where I thought that Arch would be this year, is like, hey, these throws, the easy ones are there. Maybe it's the high level offensive execution that's not there till later in the season. And we just haven't seen that. Frankly, he's been a middle of the pack quarterback for most of this year. And I mean, outside of Oklahoma, and Sam Houston, hard to find bright spots. I will say on the Schumann thing, and my humor aside, it wouldn't stun me if he gets some job interviews this offseason. Considering the track record, like Dan Lanning's done really well at Oregon, like Kirby assistants, it wouldn't shock me. I don't know that he would take the Arkansas job. That seems like maybe a stretch, don't you think?
Yeah, like maybe give him I mean, I don't have a clue, but maybe like ACC at the highest, but even maybe a little bit lower to kind of have a couple years of seasoning as a head coach. That would be that would be the path I envision for someone like that.
I think Florida State would make a ton of sense for him. I think we can talk about this on a coaching carousel. I think James Franklin's like the one domino, and I think Florida State would make a ton of sense for James Franklin if he wanted to get back in, which also impacts like Arkansas, other schools. So, the coaching carousel is going to get a lot more active in the next few weeks.
Hey, speaking of active, shout out our guy, Cousin Rick. Steven, he's back with another donation. Dun-dun-dun-dun.
It's Texas A&M's biggest fan, Cousin Rick. Gig 'em, Aggies.
Thank you, Rick. Looking forward to Cassius Howell and Dayon Hayes playing tag with Nussmeier after introducing themselves to LSU's left tackle and freshman guard. Take the Aggies, giving up 2.5. Lassan is an incredible guest. Beat the hell out of LSU. Thank you, Rick.
Appreciate you, Rick. Thank you.
All right, so who's next on the panic meter here, Steven?
How about Auburn? Mike, it's level 10, and it might not be high enough. It's breaking the panic meter. There's pieces starting to fly away. Big picture here. I mean, Hugh Freeze kind of begging for a statement of support, much like Luke Fickell got at Wisconsin and Mike Norvell got at Florida State today. I mean, come on. I mean, this Auburn team this year, it's a fascinating week-to-week storyline. So you've got the coaching situation. They've lost 4 in a row. You look offensively. Are they going to switch to Ashton Daniels over Jackson Arnold? Connor Liu, the starting center, is out for the rest of the season. I mean, that Baylor win was great, that was also week 1 of this season. And now Auburn is sitting here at 3-4. A lot of questions starting to stack up with coaching, offense, and they're not even guaranteed to make a bowl game. So that's why they are panic level 10 right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And there's a lot of speculation that if he loses this week at Arkansas, could be the end of the road for old Hugh. He was asked today also, have you spoke with John Cohen? He's I haven't heard from him, but some support would be nice, he said. So I don't know. Take that for what it's worth. Cohen's probably yelling at some official somewhere. But
did John Cohen's car start this week?
I was about to say, we're checking that his hoopty is still running out there, I guess. But I don't know. I kind of called that from a couple years ago, and it's more true than ever, I feel like.
Oh, Mike, it's 3-4 after back-to-back losing seasons in the back-to-back losing seasons as a team. There's no more excuses, right? I mean, you could say like the first year or two, you've got to recruit the roster. You got to get your guy at quarterback, like all that stuff. Like I get Brian Harsin was not a good recruiter at all. But by now, in this era of college football, you can flip a roster 50 to 60 players in one offseason. And now that you've had 3 chances to do that, and you have a guy you kind of handpicked at quarterback, I think the time is starting to run out for Hugh Freeze, and especially with 4 consecutive losses in this fashion in SEC play.
But we're close. If I have to hear that one more time, good night. I'll tell you who's close to being my favorite cousin, though. That's Rolls Royce, gifted 10 memberships. Steven, shout out Rolls Royce. He gifted Benjamin Young, Edward, U.S. Marine Corps. Appreciate you for your service. C.C. Craig, C.V. Rock 44, Devin Anderson, the guy. That's a cool name. Corbin Montag, Ryan Hogue, Janet Lindsay. You've all been gifted. Thanks to Rolls Royce. Welcome to
the family.
Shout out Rolls Royce. And he threw us a donation too, Stephen. What a guy. Hope everyone's having a great afternoon. I'm just happy I get to enjoy college football season, no matter if LSU's winning or losing. We waited too long to be mad about things out of our control. What a rational LSU fan you are, Royce. You're about the only one probably, but because I hear the sky's falling down in Old Baton Rouge, and I hate it for you. And then we also got Razor Bass. Stephen gave us $10. My wife left for Pilates class and said, "You better not be watching that podcast when I get back." I said, "You better take back-to-back classes." So thank you, Razor Bass.
Man, thank you guys. That is fantastic. Oh man.
All right. Who else on the panic meter?
Well, how about Royce? Going to talk about LSU on the panic meter. So I put LSU's panic meter kind of high. I've got them at 9. Let me kind of detail why. There's still time for this team to get going. Think about Texas A&M this week. It's a huge game. It's an opportunity to completely change the narrative. They get Alabama. They get Oklahoma. They have 3 games against ranked opponents to change the fortune of this team. So maybe if you can beat Texas A&M, you get Garrett Nussmeier a little bit healthier. You go to Alabama, you got a chance for an upset then. Then you go to play Oklahoma later in the year and set up maybe a play-in game for the playoff. That's a lot of ifs, though. And I'm thinking about this team, and the reason that the panic meter is so high, they're sitting here at 5-2 with that schedule remaining on a season where this was supposed to be a playoff team. They went the offseason, got all those portal additions on defense. Their defense is good, no doubt about it. But it's also not played great against Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. A lot of those guys are leaving at the end of this year. This is Garrett Nussmeier's last season. I worry if they lose this game and lose to Alabama and sit there at 5-4, what's the checkout factor here? I mean, we see this with a lot of teams. Like if you watch Wisconsin play Ohio State on Saturday, there were empty seats in Madison. Like when does that happen when Wisconsin plays Ohio State? Look at Florida State. Look at Florida. Like when you get to that point, you check out and you wonder, like, where does the slide in for this team? So it's high, because it feels like they are on the path to underachieving. They still have a path here to get back in it. But, Mike, it feels pretty narrow, doesn't it?
Well, I won't disagree with anything you just said, Stephen, but I will suggest, doesn't it all potentially flip if you can be the first team that knocks off A&M? And I just, checked. I should have already known that, but it's a night game. And Brian Kelly will tell you, this team's 17-1 at night. Only one loss under him anyway. And it was was it an ass whooping they took to Bama last year? So maybe he left that out conveniently. But, night game, A&M, is 6-2 acceptable? I mean, not really, particularly if you just get stomped the following week at Bama. And I'm not saying they will, but I think the vibes could be completely different if they were able to knock off Texas A&M next week. What's your thoughts on that?
100%. Because if you knock off Texas A&M, you're sitting there at 6-2 and you're back squarely on the bubble. Because if you lose this game and you're 5-3, still to play Alabama, still to play Oklahoma, it's going to be tough. In theory, you could win out and get to 9-3 and be on the bubble. I think that they're probably going to have a hard time getting in. So I think if you're sitting there at 6-2 after a big win, a bye week, you reset, maybe Nussmeier gets healthy for that Alabama showdown. Yeah, it completely changes the narrative. So if you got 2 weeks to kind of celebrate the win, as opposed to 2 weeks of hearing you've underachieved, you're out of the playoff mix, completely different storyline for LSU.
And Nuss, I thought he still looks like he's a little limited, but he looked better. I think you said that too. It looks like he's getting a little bit healthier. My concern would be Vanderbilt pushed us around. Vanderbilt kind of had their way with our defense. And quite frankly, I thought Ole Miss did too, with a backup. Of course, now he's like the starter, but Trinidad, that was his first real test. And so LSU's had 2 big-time tests, and their defense has come up short. I mean, only 24 to Ole Miss, but I believe Ole Miss fumbled like at the 2-yard line, so it could have been another score. I don't know. I think that's going to be – they're going to have to lean on this defense. I just think the season's on the line. I think it's clearly a playoff eliminator for old LSU. So at night, I don't know. I'm not as panicked. If they lose that one, I'll be panicked, if that makes sense.
Does feel like desperation for LSU here, backs against the wall. I mean, I know A&M, probably most people are going to pick A&M for good reason on Saturday night, but desperation at night, at home, season on the line, I could see LSU pulling this off.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then anyone else on the panic meter?
One more team, South Carolina. And much like Auburn, it has broken my panic thermometer. It is the shards flying everywhere. Here's why it's at 10. And number one, I hate to see South Carolina wasting a generational quarterback in Lenora Sellers. And that's exactly what's happened right now. They're on track to be 5-7 unless they can find an upset. Certainly the schedule is very difficult. They did not get a favorable draw, but there's bowl hopes. The season's on the line. The offense has been a mess. 126th in the country in offensive success rate, less than 5 yards per play in SEC games. 3 games in the SEC, they've had 10 or fewer points, and this is with Lenora Sellers. So my panic meter is a season that had a lot of potential. I would imagine Lenora Sellers is going to have a big decision to make at the end of the year. And if you told me they finished 5-7 with Lenora Sellers, given the preseason expectations and the talent that he has, it is a massive disappointment, even with a very difficult schedule. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this was a team that was talking playoff in the preseason. Now, I never thought they could quite get there, but this level of ineptitude on the offensive side of the football is borderline inexcusable with the quarterback they had. Now, I think you could, but again, no one wants to hear this, Stephen, but I think the way college football is, you tell me if I'm wrong, there was a lot of discussion, and I was very guilty of it, that they have the best quarterback in the conference, that they had the best defensive player in Dylan Stewart. They got Nick Harbor, who's a big-time recruit and who everybody wanted. And they got a left tackle that was a 5-star. Now, why am I mentioning all this? Because those four guys, I don't know what they're paying them, but I can imagine it's an astronomical amount. And I'm just talking four players. And the left tackle's been kind of a weak spot. Sellers has not played. I think he's played decently, but again, point being is at South Carolina, I don't think they got millions. They don't have LSU money, if that makes sense. So when you got these pieces that you're paying all this money to, I think it looks evident to me that the rest of the roster is suffering. Do you think I'm on to something there?
I think you are, because I think we kind of talked about this in the offseason when we talked about the top player list. And when you do something like that, it's very instructive to figure out like where the depth is. Like we talked about this with Georgia, like they didn't have a ton of players that were ranked really high, but if you looked like from 10 to 50 or so, there was a lot of Georgia players in there. And South Carolina felt very top heavy with Stewart and Sellers in there. So I think to your point, like the top of the line talent is there. There's just a lot of roster holes here. I mean, whether it's, consistency receiver, the offensive line is a mess. I mean, I kind of thought Sellers would cover up for some of this like he did last year, but it just hasn't worked out. It's just too big of a hole to dig out of. So yes, I think there's a little bit of a problem with the roster ending up being so top heavy and not enough depth in the middle right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, one team we no longer have to panic about, Stephen. That's the Florida Gators, because they done fired old Billy. So there's a lot of different directions we can go here, but it certainly sounds like it's Lane Kiffin or bust. I mean, he's literally the only candidate, seemingly, that everyone wants to reference. No idea if he's going to take the job, but I think it's clear as day that they are going to offer it to him, and I have no indication that he wants it or he's going to take it. I'm not suggesting that, but I think Florida's all in on Lane Kiffin. What do you make of this job, and where I asked you before we hopped on here to kind of rank the open coaching jobs? I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on where Florida ranks.
I think Florida is the best available job this offseason right now. I look at when these jobs come open, like what are the positives for it? And I think about access to talent in the state. Like you do not have to leave the state to get a championship roster. I know it's a little different in the portal or NIL era. I think there's a larger discussion too, like about the portal NIL thing too, because, we talk about Kiffin. I think the gap between like Ole Miss and Florida is probably a lot smaller. Ole Miss nearly made the playoff last year. If you can do that, and maybe you have all those advantages in terms of finances and facilities, like the gap is not as wide as it used to be. So I think that probably plays some into Kiffin's thinking here, but I think Florida's a good job. They've got access to talent. They also have proven that Urban, Steve Spurrier, you can win at a high level. I also think for as much grief as we gave Billy Napier about a lot of things, he did help them catch up in some of those off the field things. And of course, they've got the new football facility as well. So it felt like some of the questions around here, like modernization of facilities, like they've done some of that. It feels like this is the right coach. And administratively, if they can sort out some of that mess, then they can be back on the track to contending for the college football playoff.
Do they do hot yoga in Gainesville? I mean, that's a big question, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, not too many coaches post a picture of what their hot yoga results on before game day. Mike, I will say this. I think on the Kiffin thing, I think back to something you and I talked about before. Just because a coach is mentioned as a candidate does not mean they are going to take the job. And I think there was a lot of freak out in Oxford every time Kiffin's name pops up on a list. Like he's going to I think Kiffin probably doesn't, like I said, 10 years ago, I think you needed to take the Florida job, but also think there's something to be said about if you make about the same amount of money, you've got the keys to the castle there, you run your own show, you're happy with your boss and structure. You don't have you can do whatever you need to roster and playoff wise. Like you don't have to go to Florida if you're happy there because you can win at a high level. So I don't think it's a slam dunk. I think 10 years ago, I think it would have been a slam dunk. I think Florida is absolutely smart to pursue Lane Kiffin because he is one of the better coaches in the SEC. You have to make him say no, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Now, let me ask you this, Stephen. Let's say 2 weeks from today, Kiffin will obviously still be the Ole Miss head coach. If he has not signed a contract extension, will that tell you anything?
Indiana got Kirk Cignetti's deal done pretty quick because of the Penn State rumors. I think there's going to be some uneasiness until like pen goes to paper here. So I think 2 weeks of hearing about rumors, yeah, I would start to get a little more worried if I was Ole Miss. I will say one thing too. If you're Ole Miss, you make the playoff. Lane Kiffin's not available, right? Until December 20 something. So you've got to move quick, right? To hire, to recruit, to be able to start thinking about the portal. If some of these coaches are in the playoff, I don't know if they're going to want to be leaving. Now, that may be a different story for Kiffin. He just may want the Florida job. But I do think that the calendar could work in the favor of Ole Miss. And I know Kiffin has said many, many times that he is, content or whatever, not necessarily pursuing the next thing. So there are a lot of things working here for Ole Miss. But I would be very anxious if I was an Ole Miss fan if there is no extension soon.
Mm-hmm. And how big of a distraction, if at all, do you think this could be for Ole Miss?
Potentially. They get Oklahoma this week. You still have to go to the Egg Bowl. They play Florida later in the season.
That's the one I'd be worried about. You know what?
Yeah, absolutely. If Kiffin comes out and just says, no interest, doesn't leave any wiggle room, I think it probably goes away. I think the more that it hangs out there, and I don't think it's any doubt that Florida really wants Lane Kiffin, if it's not put to rest, it probably would become a distraction at some point.
Mm-hmm. And is there any coach that you think Florida could get or may be interested in, like a James Franklin, that they could or should hire, maybe even over Lane Kiffin? Or do you think Lane Kiffin is the obvious number one?
I think Lane Kiffin is obvious number one. I keep seeing Marcus Freeman to Florida. I just don't see it. I don't think he's going to leave Notre Dame, but certainly you have to call and ask him. I'll also say one other coach I would call and ask. I don't think he's attainable, but why not Jeff Brom at Louisville? I don't think he's leaving. He's at his alma mater. He's got a good thing going. But man, that guy, you want to talk about putting the fun and gun back out there? Like Jeff Brom could coach some offense, and he's got ties to the state of Florida too. So he would make a ton of sense. I just don't think he's going to leave. If you ask me the most realistic options, Mike, it's probably like Alex Golesh, John Sumrall, James Franklin, Jed Fish, and maybe even Eli Drinkowitz. Like I think that's maybe the pool that Florida's hiring from.
And then one more name, and this is just something I've heard, Stephen, and not that he's wanting to leave immediately or not that he's going to take his Florida job, but I hear, and I've also heard, you would know better than I, but apparently his contract makes it very prohibitive for him to leave at this point in time. But apparently Dan Lanning is very interested in coaching in the SEC. It's probably would be an astronomical amount, but would that make any sense to you?
Absolutely. I would admit that I'd be a little surprised if he leaves this offseason. He has said many times, like, the grass isn't greener. It's green in Eugene, and he seems to be pretty content at Oregon. But that being said, I mean, if you're Florida, you absolutely have to call Dan Lanning, right? Just to make sure, because if there is a chance that he is interested and those public comments aren't quite as in lock with maybe what his feelings are, you got to be sure, right?
And again, I've been up there. I love it. That's actually the best stadium I think I've ever seen a football game in. So it's like, I am a fan of that whole thing. It's just such an outpost. And it's so far away from talent, and it's now that you're in the Big Ten, you're flying back. I don't know. I would not be a fan of if Florida offered me or Oregon offered me, I wouldn't even hesitate. I'd be like, pack in the bags. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Florida's a better job, I think. I think it's probably a better job, even if the Pac-12 was still around. I think it's just easier to get talent to.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon's got the Nike thing that's nice. They've got a ton of money in NIL and all that. They've got great facilities too. But there's something to be said about being in the SEC where you can just go to Florida and drive your car and recruit the heck out of the state and do a little recruiting nationally. So yeah, if I'm Florida, Kiffin, Lanning, Freeman, you aim high and see what happens. And then you always have like the Jed Fish and Alex Golish and anybody else, James Franklin to fall back on.
Right. And just, these things never quite go as you expect them to go. I think Billy Napier was kind of like their guy, and they went and did it. But I don't know if you recall this, Stephen, where the last Florida coaching search, it was like Chip Kelly, Scott Frost. That was like the battle of Florida.
Yeah.
And we even had who was it? Spurrier's like, you got to hire Scott Frost. Look at what he's kicking ass at Central Florida, and they didn't get either one of them, and they had to settle for Dan Mullen. And I know they didn't end well, but that proved to be the significantly better hire.
Absolutely. Dan, for the ending was not great for Dan Mullen, but he still won quite a few games, and they took him to the SEC championship. Like, I consider that a successful tenure, right?
Oh, and let me ask, because we haven't talked to Arkansas lately. Did you see Dan Mullen? Speaking of Dan Mullen, it was like some media member was like, if they offered Dan Mullen, he'd take it tomorrow. And then Dan Mullen, now he might just be bullshitting, but he said 0.0% chance. They should hire Gus Malzahn. Thoughts on any of that, Stephen?
Gus may not come with a buyout, because if Norvell gets fired as his offensive coordinator, he may come cheap. But no, Arkansas should not hire Gus Malzahn. Transport me back to like 2010. Maybe it's like feasible and makes sense. Mullen was very adamant at a press conference last week that he is going to be the head coach at UNLV next year. Now, we'll see when all the jobs come open. It may not age well. I think that he will be on the radar for a lot of openings. I think he'd be a great hire for Arkansas, honestly. I know retreads don't necessarily work, but he's got a track record of offense. So I don't know if I necessarily believe that. But I think we'll wait and see once this carousel gets a little crazier, if that's true.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll tell you who's not waiting, Stephen. That's All Day Trey. He's back, gifted another membership. It's time to hail no. So he didn't even use the profanities. Hail no. Welcome to
the family.
Appreciate you, All Day Trey. All right, All Day, Stephen. I want to know you're updated, and I'm just going to let the fans know they are not going to be happy. Because last week, Stephen had 6 SEC teams in the playoff. Are you ready to reveal your updated SEC playoff projections?
Let's do it, because I got some good news and some bad news to deliver here.
Oh, I know the bad news.
Yeah.
We're down to 4. What the hell, Stephen? Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. Not that anyone is upset with those, but we have one Tennessee loss, kicks them down to Music City Bowl. What the hell, Stephen? LSU was in there in the discussion. Now they're in the Mayo Bowl getting, man, I would actually like to see Brian Kelly dumped with the Mayo. Oklahoma's been up there. They're still alive. Missouri, Vanderbilt. Explain yourself, Stephen.
So, Mike, that's the bad news. We went from 4 to 6 teams from the SEC in the playoff. Let me walk through what happened here. So Notre Dame beat USC on Saturday. That is significant for Notre Dame's playoff hopes, because they are on track to get to 10-2. They are a bid stealer from the SEC. Georgia Tech also beat Duke. They were a slight underdog. They still have to play Georgia. They still have some tough games, but they are bid stealers at this point. And with Miami losing, the odds of the ACC getting 2 teams in went up, ironically. So some things outside the SEC's control hurt the playoff chances of a couple teams. But I would also say this, Mike, keep in mind, the good news is this is just a snapshot going into week 9. This is going to change a lot over the next couple of weeks. When you look at some of those teams on the bubble, you look at Texas, they have a chance to play their way in. Vanderbilt, big game against Missouri this weekend. Tennessee, Texas. Even look at Oklahoma with the schedule that they have. If they can get to 9-3, there are plenty of chances for this team to play their way in. Also, I think we're due for some upsets somewhere along the way. I'm not 100% convinced that Georgia Tech is going to go undefeated before they play Georgia. So what I would say is bad news. The odds of the SEC getting 6 decreased this week. But the good news is there's still plenty of time. And I suspect that number may change before we get to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. So again, just a quick recap at Stephen's playoff projections: Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M out of the SEC. As for the bowl games, if you're just listening back, he's got Florida in the Liberty Bowl facing Cincinnati. There you go, Napier crew. LSU in the Mayo Bowl against Virginia. Oklahoma in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Nebraska. Love that. 2 classic teams there. Citrus Bowl, he's got Texas, Michigan. That's a nice brand matchup there. Gasparilla Bowl, Auburn, Memphis. Music City Bowl, Tennessee, Minnesota. Gator Bowl, Vanderbilt, SMU. Texas Bowl, Missouri, TCU. Birmingham Bowl, Mississippi State, Troy. Out of these teams that are not in the playoff, Stephen, which out of the SEC, which one do you think is most realistic that they battle their way back into the playoff contention?
It's a good question. I would probably take the winner of that Tennessee Vanderbilt game, because I think it's kind of setting up at this point that both of those teams are right on the bubble going into the last week of the season and with a chance to maybe play their way in. Mike, one thing I do want to say on the bowl projections is because of the playoff going from 6 to 4 for the SEC, you're seeing a team like Tennessee fall down the pecking order. Keep in mind, too, with some of these, a lot of this is going to end up with, has a team been to this bowl game in this amount of years? There's really kind of a directive to change this up. So that's why kind of Tennessee slid a little bit in the bowl projections, also trying to prevent some rematches from the regular season in non-conference games. There's a lot of things to work through, but I would say like Tennessee is and Vanderbilt is as well. If those two teams can find a way to navigate to that season-ending game and be 9-2, there is a chance that game is probably for a playoff spot, perhaps. I don't think that's crazy to think.
No, not at all. But this isn't crazy either, Stephen. North of Knox wants to know, what's Stephen's buyout? Get his ass out of here.
So like an astronomical number to raise. It's like last week was like, how much money can we raise to keep Marler off the air? Now it's like, keep Stephen off the air, man.
All right. No, we kid. We kid.
I need that Mike Norvell buyout, right?
All right, Stephen, let's look ahead. Man, what an epic weekend here in the SEC. Where would you like to tackle first with all these amazing games? 7 all-conference matchups this weekend in the Southeastern Conference.
Mike, let's start with Missouri and Vanderbilt, right? We just talked playoff, both these teams in the playoff mix. I think that's a good place to start, don't you?
Yeah, college game day coming to town, and I'm calling it Playoff Eliminator Saturday, Stephen, and I think this is one of them where, yes, you can still get in with 2 losses, but I think if Missouri gets a second loss, I think if Vanderbilt gets a second loss, that would obviously mean they got to run the table to make it. I don't think either one of these teams runs the table in November. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think both these teams are going to lose again. Obviously, they play Saturday, but the odds of probably losing outside of this game are probably pretty high. Missouri's won 5 in a row in this series, so they've kind of had the upper hand over Vanderbilt. But this is also a different Vanderbilt team, Mike, as you know. I love the way this team has played all season. We talked about it in the offseason with Diego Pavia having a second year, what they could do different. He's healthy going into the month of November. All those things are huge. I think the biggest storyline for me just is what it means for the playoff chase. You've got these two teams sitting here on the bubble. You know, Vanderbilt wins, they set up a huge game against Texas. If Missouri wins, you're setting up Texas A&M and Oklahoma later this season. So a lot at stake. I think the matchup that I'm watching is Pavia against that Missouri front. This Missouri front can create a lot of havoc. Love the way that Tim Beck and this offense can, strong side, weak side, that offensive line and what they do. So I think that matchup is going to be just a fascinating back and forth. And then, of course, Missouri with their rushing attack that's been a little quiet the last couple of weeks. Can they get it going against Vanderbilt? Those are some of the things I'm watching.
How big of a concern is it that Missouri has, as you put it, gotten quiet on the rushing attack? Do you think that, I mean, obviously Auburn has got a really good defensive front. Alabama's got all the talent in the world. Do you think that's more about the talent they've been facing, or do you think that is maybe Southeastern Conference defense is kind of figuring out their scheme a little bit?
Could it be a little bit of both with probably good defenses weighted maybe a little bit more? Vanderbilt is like 45th in the country in defensive success rate against the run. So there probably are more opportunities this week. I like their chances better to run it against Vanderbilt than I did Auburn or Alabama. I do think this offensive line, and I think, the passing game, if you don't trust, I shouldn't say don't trust Pabula, but if he makes mistakes, like it gets a little easier to defend if you're Auburn or Alabama. So I think the matchup is a little bit kinder to Missouri this week. But yeah, to your point, they've got to get it going this week against Vanderbilt to have a chance to win on the road.
And I really like this comment from Leafs 50. The box is stacked. They're forcing Pabula to throw. I think that's got a lot to do with it. I think we've got tape on Bo Pabula now to where we know what he can do. We know what he struggles with. And, he's really not a great downfield passer. And I think he's struggling to read things at times. Now, again, going on the road at Auburn, not easy. He got the win. He scored the winning touchdown. So I'm not sitting here saying he's an awful player. His mistakes really hurt them against Alabama, but he made some plays that put him in a position. Again, so I'm not saying he's awful or anything like that, but second road game, Vanderbilt, Nussmeier was able to have some success against them. So he very well could have success against Vanderbilt's defense, but if it comes down to Diego Pavia and Bo Pabula and who has a better game, as much as I've liked Pabula, I think you have to give that edge to Diego Pavia. But that doesn't mean that'll be the case on Saturday, but that'll be critical in that game, I think.
Yeah, it will. I think stacking the box, that's exactly what I was trying to say a few minutes ago. So thank you to the comment section there. Mike, do you agree with me that Vanderbilt's probably a little bit more of a favorable matchup for Missouri, though, than Auburn or Alabama?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, if you look at Pabula's numbers in SEC games, 5 interceptions, he's also 14th in yards per attempt. The only quarterback that's worse than that is Jackson Arnold. So I think everything kind of plays off that. Like Vanderbilt's going to be smart to stack the box and say, Pabula, if you beat us, hats off to you. But if you're Missouri, I think the odds of you being able to run the ball better this week are higher than Auburn or Alabama. And certainly maybe Pabula on the ground. I mean, we saw this against Auburn, a couple plays with his legs. That's going to be super important.
Yeah, that was the last thing I was going to add. Far more mobile, obviously, than Garrett Nussmeier. I know Ty Simpson can run, but not nearly to the degree of Pabula. So that's going to be that added development. It's going to make it even more difficult for Vanderbilt to kind of defend this Missouri attack, I think.
Also, I think it's fair to point this out, Mike, that Vanderbilt has not really faced a running back like Ahmad Hardy this year. I mean, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, Georgia State, Utah State, Alabama, LSU. That's not exactly the gauntlet of rushing attacks, right?
Jam Miller had a lot of success against them.
Yeah.
And Ahmad Hardy's much he's a better player. I'll just put it that way.
Right. Yeah, I think he's the best back in the SEC. Yeah. I think Vanderbilt, you're right. Jam Miller is a good player. And I think certainly that he's in that category, but Hardy's just on a different level compared to some of the backs they faced this year.
Mm-hmm. All right. How about what would be another game on top of your radar here?
Man, how about that Ole Miss and Oklahoma game?
Yeah.
Man, I can't. This game is so fascinating. Just trying to put together some early, predictions and thoughts for this weekend. And this is when I'm having a hard time kind of getting my arms around what to expect. I think it feels like a very critical game for playoff purposes. I mean, with Oklahoma's schedule, You get Ole Miss coming to your place after Ole Miss lost to Georgia. Feels like you got to get this one if you're Oklahoma. I think if you're Ole Miss, it's kind of the same thing we talked about with Oklahoma last week, which was you don't want to let one loss become two. And the matchup of the Ole Miss offense against Oklahoma defense, man, what a great X's and O's battle it's going to be between Kiffin and Venables and Chambliss and the Ole Miss playmakers against a very good Oklahoma defensive front. So just kind of fascinated to see how some of these individual battles impact a potentially playoff elimination game, like you said.
Are you any level of surprise that Oklahoma's favored in this matchup? Because quite honestly, that's a little surprising to me.
That's a good question. I thought Ole Miss might be favored, but pretty small coming into the week. I think I'm going to guess here, probably home field advantage. Also, I'm going to think defense for Oklahoma, but maybe the odds makers kind of like what they saw from the Oklahoma offense last week, the rushing attack coming in. You give Meter another week to knock off the rust against an Ole Miss defense that is gettable. I could see why Oklahoma's favored here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any concern that Ole Miss is? I don't know. I don't even know if they are, but if they are unsettled at quarterback, could that linger into a matchup like this where you have to be good? You have to be outstanding at quarterback to have any kind of success against Oklahoma's defense.
It's a good question. It does feel like the conversation about the quarterback spot is probably, I don't want to say more legitimate after Georgia. I mean, Chambliss didn't play terrible. It does feel like some of the things like you mentioned with like downfield throws, like if you hit on more of those, does it help Keywon Lacey get going? It does feel like more of a conversation this week. And I think Kiffin said before the game that Austin Simmons was healthy, and he's had a couple weeks now to get ready. So in a game like this, I think you kind of want the mobility that Chambliss brings you because of what Oklahoma can do in defense. But at the same time, you've got to be able to stretch the field to get Lacey going. And that way Oklahoma's defense just isn't teeing off for a couple quarters. Is that fair?
I think so. And let me ask you this, Stephen. If Oklahoma, minus anything John Mateer does, but I'm just talking other positions, if they rush for over, 100 yards, what if Oklahoma rushes for over 100 yards without relying on Mateer? How confident are you that they can beat Ole Miss?
I think you have to be pretty confident because if you're talking 100 yards without Mateer, that would probably mean he's probably getting some on his own. And that means that they were able to run it successfully enough to set up some things to the air. I think that means they probably win. Somewhere over 100 rushing yards is probably a good barometer to set for this team this week.
Mm-hmm. And is there a number in your mind that either one of these teams really needs to reach to win this game? Like 20, like is 21 enough, or do you think it'll take more than that for either team?
I was going to say maybe like 24 because that's what Ole Miss needed to beat LSU. The Georgia game was a little bit different, but I think about 24 given the defensive prowess of Oklahoma. One thing I think we should mention here, Mike, is Ole Miss is -4 in turnover margin. Oklahoma is -5. So this on paper, I think this game's pretty even. You give Oklahoma an advantage because of home field and defense, but that turnover margin in a game like this, it feels very much 50-50. If one of these teams is -3 in turnover margin on Saturday, that's going to be pretty telling.
Mm-hmm. All right. What is a third game? Oh man, it's got to be A&M LSU, right?
Absolutely. Man, I can't wait for this game because we talked about it earlier. It's the setup is like LSU backs against the wall. You've got to win for the playoff. And if you're Texas A&M, you're just quietly kind of humming along, checking out victories. I don't think Texas A&M is getting much national credit, despite being 7-0 and being in the top 5. But there's a real chance. Like Saturday night, there's not a lot of marquee games on. There's a chance for the nation to watch Texas A&M and realize how good this team is. Or LSU wins at home and changes the narrative of their season. I think one of the matchups that I'm watching is that LSU offensive line against Cassius Howe and that Texas A&M defensive front. Because if you're LSU, you know those guys are coming. And you better be. Nussmeier is either going to have to make some quick throws to beat him, or LSU wins that battle. They get enough on the ground and they pull off kind of a mild upset, I guess, in the minds of most of us, to keep their playoff hopes alive. And then you've got that Texas A&M offense, which has been red hot against a good LSU defense. So there's a ton of fascinating one-on-ones that I'm going to be watching for here.
Well, how about this is for a key to the game? LSU's got to limit Marcel Reed from hitting them on the ground. So once again, Blake Baker struggles to defend these rushing quarterbacks, and that's what really killed him against Vanderbilt. There was several times where LSU turned their back on Pavia, and he read it correctly and took off and scored, I believe, 2 rushing touchdowns, 86 yards, if I have that right. So, and Marcel, I know it's different last year, but he destroyed them on the ground. How critical will that be in this matchup?
Also, Trinidad Chambliss, too, had 71 rushing yards against this LSU defense. So, yeah, I mean, I think limiting the playmaking ability of Marcel Reed, and I guess that's the thing, is it feels like A&M can hurt you a lot of different ways. Like if Vanderbilt is able to move the ball on the ground, A&M's offensive line is better, and they're going to come downhill with Reuben Owens and other guys. And then you got to deal with the receivers. Then you got to deal with the Marcel Reed mobility. They're a really hard team to defend. It feels like you're going to have to take away something. But if Reed gets to 60, 70 rushing yards, that's a bad sign for LSU's defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how many points? Because this could be this is another one. How many points will it take to win for these two, do you think?
It's tricky because it feels like both defenses are solid enough to keep this one from getting to 43-35, right? It doesn't.
Yeah.
I feel like if I'm LSU and I can get to, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you do need 30 because it took over 30 to beat Vanderbilt. I don't know. Is that crazy?
No, I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. This game could go a lot of. I could see the offense is struggling. I could see the offense is having a lot of success.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. That's the hard part about this game is it's very hard to get a read on it. Even though we've watched these teams play 7 times this year, we don't really know what to expect. Probably because I think if this game is in College Station, I don't think there's any doubt about who people would be picking. I think there's some doubt because of where this game is and the desperation for LSU. But I will also say this. A lot of people, including myself, have bought into LSU at times this year thinking Nussmeier's healthy. It's going to mean that. I mean, is the third time the charm after losing to Ole Miss and Vanderbilt? I mean, it kind of feels like they might have to get 27, 30 points to beat Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm. And this is probably not a good comparison, Stephen, but A&M's been on the road twice this year, at Notre Dame and at Arkansas. Notre Dame's got, one of the most dynamic rushing attacks in the country. Arkansas's got one of the most gifted quarterbacks and play caller combinations in the country. Both times, A&M give up over 40 points to those teams. So LSU, a far cry from either one of those scenarios. But, just keep – I mean, if let's say – and I'm not saying this happens, but if LSU scores 40, I mean, I would start to have some concerns about this defense on the road. I mean, would that be fair?
Yeah, I think it would, because you still have to go to Missouri and you still have to go to Texas. And so if you lose this game and your defense struggles, it doesn't get any easier playing Missouri and Texas. And all of a sudden you go from, hey, we could be 8-0, and all of a sudden you could go to 9-3. So yeah, I mean, I am worried about it. And I think that's also kind of what gets at kind of what makes this game hard to predict is like people at home and road are two totally different things. Like your snap counts and the crowd noise plays such a role in helping some of these defenses. But Mike, I will say, if A&M wins this game, I do think they are on a pretty clear track to make the playoff. Because if you're 8-0 and you get South Carolina and Samford at your place, if you take care of business in those 2 games and you split the other 2, I mean, you're 11-1. You're making the playoff. And I think that's the stakes here for Texas A&M is win this game, be 8-0, I know coaches look at it differently, but they are sitting in very good shape if they can beat LSU on Saturday night.
Hey, we got an interesting question and a donation from JD Wardam Eagle. Who wins if Auburn and Texas play? First 1-6, right?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if you're Texas, you're probably like sweating at the idea of trying to block Keldrick Falk in the Auburn defensive front. I don't know that Auburn could score though against Texas, so I probably would take Texas like, I don't know, 10-6, 13-6, right? That's a great question, by the way.
What an ugly game I'd hope
Yeah.
never see. All right, how about Tennessee at Kentucky? Stephen, Tennessee's owned this series, but I don't know. That's all I got. You got any thoughts on it?
I think my first thought is, can Kentucky do this again? I mean, they, gave Texas a battle last week. It was a 4-quarter game. I think the problem for Kentucky is I don't think Josh Heupel is going to take his foot off the pedal like Steve Sarkisian did. I don't know what that offensive game plan was, but it wasn't good. I don't think we're going to see a super cautious offense out of Tennessee. I just think the firepower of Tennessee is going to be hard for Kentucky to keep pace with, unless Kentucky does what they did last week and they did to Ole Miss, which is they are able to dictate the style of play. They are just kind of playing ball control, small gains, first downs, 7-minute drives, and Tennessee touches the ball 3 or 4 times in the first half. Texas defense is better than Tennessee, so there are some opportunities here, but this series has been very heavy in favor of Tennessee, and I just think the firepower of Tennessee will probably make it harder for Kentucky to do what they did to Texas.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see, Stephen, if how engaged the Kentucky fans are. Another tough loss. This is, I think, their number one game on their schedule, though. So I'm not saying it'll be like none of them show up, because I certainly think a lot will. But I wonder just how engaged they are. And this may be their final one where it's like, all right, if we don't win it, I mean, I think a lot of them already turned on Stoops, but this will be a real opportunity for him to kind of cool those waters. So from that angle, it's kind of interesting, don't you think? Where this very well could be a circle the wagons type game.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's absolutely within the realm of possibility here. I also wonder, did they expend too much energy on Texas? Like, did they empty the tank to beat Texas? And now you got to go, oh, here's Tennessee. It's a little bit different of a battle. Yes, Tennessee defense is vulnerable. But, I mean, this Tennessee offense, if Kentucky gets off to a slow start, it'll be 14-0 before they know it. And then the crowd's out of the game. There's no chance. Kentucky, the fact they were able to keep the crowd in the game, I think added to the uneasiness of Texas, because they were very cautious on offense. It's fascinating to me to see how these games play out, because it's almost like Texas did not want to attempt to pass downfield. They did not want to do anything other than run and punt and put it back to their defense. Am I crazy?
No. Way to go, Shark-Keesian. All right, how about this wild one here, Stephen? Auburn at Arkansas. We kind of already referenced it. Auburn can't move the ball. Arkansas can't stop anybody. Taylor Green versus defense, though, could be worth the price of admission alone.
Oh, 100%. That's the matchup that's going to be on my mind on Saturday, is seeing what Taylor Green can do against this Auburn defense. I mean, you've got good on good and bad on bad, because if Auburn can't score 20 points here against this Arkansas defense, the problems are even worse than we expected for this Auburn offense. I mean, Auburn has won 7 out of the last 9 against Arkansas. We look at LSU and kind of see that last stand mentality. Doesn't that apply here to Auburn? Because if you win this game, you still got Kentucky, you got an FCS opponent. I know it's not what you are striving for, but there's a path to bowl eligibility. If you lose this week, I mean, it just feels like the season could really go downhill to play Vanderbilt and Alabama still. So it feels like this is make or break here for Auburn in this season. I mean, do you need to throw a pass? Can you run the option this week? I mean, Ashton Daniels is a good runner. Arkansas is last in the SEC against the run. That might be the easiest way to win this game. And you keep Taylor Green on the sidelines if you can do that.
Yeah. I don't know, Stephen. I kind of feel like the last 2 for Auburn was the last stand
Yeah.
with Georgia, how they came out, how impressive they were in the first half. And then even Missouri, that was in their grasp. I just don't know if they can keep getting up off that mat. I didn't think Arkansas could, though, and they're doing it week in and week out. So how about this, Stephen? Is it fair to say whoever starts fast, if either one does, but whoever starts fast, I think they could run away with this thing?
I wouldn't count out Arkansas from a slow start because they did it last week against Texas A&M. And also, I think they have the firepower to do it. I think if Auburn gets behind, I have no confidence in their offense to be able to come back from like down 13, 17 points. Also, I think, I don't think it's like last stand territory, but I think you worry about teams like Arkansas because they expended so much week over week. Like, where is the tank at? But this Auburn game is winnable. I know Auburn's defense is very good. Like, the matchups don't necessarily favor Arkansas. But I think if one team is going to be motivated, it's probably going to be Arkansas and Bobby Petrino. And what a win could mean for Petrino, helping him potentially keep the full-time job. I suspect the Hogs are probably the safer play in terms of motivation. Is that fair?
My dog certainly agrees with you. I know that. But, that's what I'm saying. I think Arkansas is still in it to win it. I don't know if Auburn will be after this yet another loss.
It feels like Auburn is the team that needs to get off to a faster start because of the firepower that Arkansas has. But not only that, just the way the season has gone for this Auburn team. Like one thing goes wrong, team falls apart, offense struggles, can't keep pace on the scoreboard with Arkansas. It feels like if Auburn can start this game fast, it kind of puts away some of those bad feelings. Otherwise, if they fall behind, they could blink and Taylor Green could score 2 touchdowns. So I think a fast start is critical here for Auburn.
Hey, shout out the Bagel, Stephen. He gave us $20. There's a pretty plausible possibility that 5 SEC teams finish with 1 loss or less. What does Stephen think would happen in that scenario?
I think they're all making the playoff for sure. Kind of do the math here. I think one team from the Big 12 is definitely getting in. And we know one G5 team will be in. BYU is a bid stealer out of the Big 12 if Texas Tech doesn't lose again. So that's potential for 2. I think definitely 1 ACC, maybe 2. Big 10, definitely Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana. So I think there's still room for 5 or 6 SEC teams in there. It would probably take, I think we're down to like 5 or 6 undefeated teams. The path for like a 1-loss SEC team getting blocked out of the playoffs seems pretty slim. Is that fair, Mike?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who would be the 5 with 1 loss or less. A&M, of course. Bama, I guess. Georgia. Ole Miss. And maybe he's Oklahoma, Missouri. But they all play each other. I don't know that we could get 5 1 losses. Could we?
Yeah, I'm trying to do the math in my head. I don't.
A&M, Bama, and Georgia, I think they could. But I think the other 3, because Ole Miss plays Oklahoma, Missouri and Oklahoma play. Well, Vanderbilt too, I guess.
Vanderbilt, right.
That's interesting. I don't think that happens, though. Do you?
The way this season has gone, I would be surprised if we end up with 5 1-loss teams.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like I said, to answer your question, it's a fascinating scenario. I do think they all would be in the playoff at that point because I just think the math favors them. I think strength of schedule favors all those teams. It would take something probably pretty extraordinary for an SEC team to get boxed out in that scenario, I think.
Yeah. Well, hey, one of those teams, Bama, Stephen, on the road at Carolina. Any thoughts on that one? And hey, I kid, but not really, because it is the reality. These are the damn games DeBoer struggles with on the road big time favorite, unranked opponent, double digit favorite, Florida State, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. I mean, I'm sensing a theme here, Steven.
Also, mobile quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Jackson Arnold, Diego Pavia, Thomas Castellanos. Here comes Lenora Sellers. I think that's the storyline for me in this game, which is, can Alabama finish the task? Because the way they've played, they should take care of business on Saturday. South Carolina, the way the offense is operating, probably hard to see them matching Ty Simpson score for score. We talked last week, Mike, scores on defense or special teams. They may need 2 of them in this game to win if they don't have an answer for Ty Simpson. So I think just on paper, the matchups all favor Alabama. The only reason you have a little bit of doubt in your mind is what's happened on the road to Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, is that these games where they should win, they've lost. And so that is why I'm leaving the light on this week for South Carolina in terms of an upset, is that Alabama, I've seen this before under Kalen DeBoer. If they're a different team, they should be able to go up here and win. I think they probably will, but there's all that the history has told us what this team does under Kalen DeBoer in road games. Also think it's pretty important that Dylan Stewart is healthy and able to go, because that pass rush for South Carolina is going to be ultra critical to try and slow down Ty Simpson.
Right, and the statistic that's going around, and it's well-deserved, and they should be honored, Bama beating 4 consecutive ranked teams in 4 weeks without a bye. That's great, but that takes its toll too, right, Stephen? Yeah. And I think it's, I don't know, I'm curious to know your thoughts. I know it was a 17-point win over Tennessee, and yeah, that was the largest win, or at least just by the actual point differential. But is it crazy to say Bama was least impressive in the Tennessee one than they were Georgia, Vanderbilt, or Missouri? Because I got them number 1 in my power rankings. I've had them there for a couple of weeks. This was my preseason pick to win the SEC. So, don't sit here and say I'm just being a hater. Of those 4 wins, I thought they were kind of the least impressive against Tennessee. Am I crazy? And I'm not saying that because they're bad. I'm saying it because to me it looked like that 4 games against 4 ranked teams in 4 weeks had taken its toll a little bit on Alabama.
Yeah, I was almost tempted to say you've had too much Tennessee legends over there. No, I don't think that's crazy at all. I think just in terms, I mean, we see this with teams all the time, is that you play like, whatever is a heavyweight fight week after week, and it takes its toll. It's so different in this in the SEC compared to some of these other leagues. And if you're playing top 25 teams and you're playing some on the road and some at home, like, it will take its toll on Alabama. Plus, I also just, like, from a mindset perspective, I mean, if you're Alabama and you've reeled off wins against Vanderbilt, Georgia, and Missouri, and you get to this point and you're in Tennessee and you're like, hey, we've beaten 4 ranked teams. This South Carolina team, they can't score. They got beat bad by Oklahoma last week. You watch the tape and you go, it's not going to be a battle, right? And what happens? South Carolina could score on special teams early. Lenora Sellers breaks off a big run. All of a sudden, Alabama's down 14. That doubt on the road sets in. So I worry about just energy level, like the tank, and also just track record here for Alabama on the road under Kalen DeBoer. It's going to take a lot from South Carolina, but I do think the tank might be approaching the quarter. You got a quarter till it's empty. It's a good thing they got a bye week after this.
All right, then final word, Stephen. Texas, mighty Texas at Mississippi State, coming off a heartbreaker. Thoughts on this one?
I don't know if I'd use the word mighty after what that offensive performance was. Oh, man. I said this earlier, Mike, you might think I'm crazy, but I'll say it again. I think if that Texas team shows up and they play that way, they will get beat this week. I think Mississippi State is a tougher opponent in Starkville because of what they can do offensively. We know they can run the ball well. Blake Shapen, when he's not making strange decisions at the end of the game, can hit some big plays in the passing game. I do think we'll see a better effort from Texas this week. They're a week removed from the Oklahoma game, and plus, I'm sure with the way that game played out in Lexington, there ought to be some motivation. There ought to be some motivation because the playoff is still very much at stake here for Texas. You have to keep winning. I think for Mississippi State, I do think about like program defining wins, and they got one against Arizona State, but beating Texas at home, if you're Jeff Lebby, if you beat Texas and knock them out of the playoff chase and you get a 5th win, that's a pretty big step forward for this program. There's an opportunity here for Mississippi State to kind of land a knockout punch on the Texas playoff hope. So there's a lot at stake for both teams. I think the matchups to watch got to be that Mississippi State offensive line against Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill. Colin Simmons starting to turn it on as we get into the month of November. I think he could really cause some havoc on Saturday. I think if you're Texas, you got to be optimistic about, hey, maybe you can run the ball a little bit better on Mississippi State this week. They've struggled to stop the run the last couple of weeks. So there are some opportunity here. Texas has been pretty bad on the road, though. So I don't know that I have a ton of confidence in Texas in the spot right now.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you who I do got confidence in, Stephen. And that's All Day Trey, who just gifted another membership, this time to Sean Wilson. Sean, welcome to
the family.
Yeah, thank you, All Day Trey. And then we had one junior. Appreciate you, Junior, for the donation. Which top team do you think could collapse down the stretch? And I don't know if you've noticed this, Stephen, but right above our heads here, we got the SEC in order. So let's just go the teams that are the top. So A&M, Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. Those are the only teams that we'll consider for this because he's saying the top. So top half. And not that you're guaranteeing this, but which one most likely to collapse down the stretch, whatever collapse means to you? Who would be your most likely team to falter down the stretch?
Probably a boring answer, but what about Oklahoma with the schedule?
I think that's likely, or not, maybe not likely, but the smartest option.
I mean, they could conceivably lose each of the next 5 games. I don't think they will, but they could, and they're all ranked opponents. Especially if John Mateer, like, what if he gets? I mean, I'm not rooting for injuries or certainly hoping he doesn't get hurt, but what if he aggravates the injury? Like, you could see this team sliding quickly to 6-6. The other team that came to mind, I don't think it would be a complete collapse, but what if the noise around Kiffin and Ole Miss gets louder, or in Florida, I should say, and they lose to Oklahoma and they still got to play, what about like Lenore Sellers going off? What about DJ Lagway going off? And then you still got to play the Egg Bowl.
Can we still say Cocktober, November 1st? I think we can, Stephen.
I think that counts. Yeah, it's weak. It's adjacent to it. Yeah.
I'm just saying, throw that out there. What about now? This team I am really like rooting for because they were my underdog, and everybody was ready to dismiss them. But there's a scenario, Stephen, where Vanderbilt lose this week, lose to Texas, lose to Tennessee. They own Hugh Freeze, so I won't even utter that one. But I mean, 3 losses to close us out. That's conceivable for Vanderbilt, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Man, I think that's pretty realistic. And I mean, Auburn, it's a stretch, but if they get their act together, defensively with what they could do, I'm sure that could end up being a little bit closer maybe than some people think. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think given the next 2 games plus the road trip to Tennessee, it's a manageable, but it's also a tough stretch here for Vanderbilt. I do think, we'll see what happens this Saturday. I think Alabama and Georgia and Texas A&M, I feel pretty safe in putting into that like category of low risk for bottoming out. Don't you think?
Yeah, no, I think so as well. And Stephen, I also think we are pushing 2 hours here. So, man, I can't take up any more of your time. Any closing thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Mike, I can't wait for week 9. Week 8 was awesome. Loved on Saturday, getting like whiplash, switching around between these SEC games. So can't wait to see what week 9 has in store. But as we're talking here, just thinking about through some of these scenarios that all the cousins are bringing up, man, the month of November is going to be awesome for this SEC race. This conference is so clustered. The race to get to Atlanta, the race to get to the playoffs, so many teams alive, coaching changes. Man, this might be one of the craziest Novembers I think I can remember covering college football in a while, potentially.
A November to remember. Go check it out. And check out JP in the comments. We appreciate you, buddy. Today's shout-outs, Junior, Steven Up, Mizzou fan, number 7, Cousin JR, of course, Brandon Norwood, Trey, Droughty, All Day Trey, Cyrus Sellers, Vols by 50, Slurrith, always butcher that, Arch Torrance, Cousin Rick, Rolls Royce, Razor Bass, JD, War Damn Eagle, and the Bengal. We appreciate you, JP. We appreciate you, Steven. Before you go, remind the cousins where they can follow you and where can they find your work.
You can read all of my work over at athlonsports.com. Come follow me over on Twitter at AthlonSteven and Stephen L. CFB over on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Thank you, Stephen, for stopping by and dropping all this knowledge on us. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back tomorrow in the late morning, early afternoon with the Roush Hour. And then Cousin Shane will be back tomorrow to preview Week 9 in the SEC, 7 o'clock, 6 Eastern, same time as always. Until then, we'll catch you on the next one.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.